Welcome back to English Unfiltered, the podcast where we explore real conversations in English. I'm Alex.
And I'm Jamie. And today we're diving into, well, a feeling that is just incredibly frustrating.
Oh, yeah, we have all been there. You know, you can be watching a movie in English, tracking these really complex plot lines,
Right.
understanding every single subtle joke, right? But then the second someone on the street asks you for simple directions, your brain just completely empties.
Just a total agonizing freeze. It is that classic deer in the headlights moment, you know?
Exactly.
It's universally terrifying. And the physical response is instant. Like your heart rate spikes, get that tunnel vision, and suddenly a language you've literally studied for years just evaporates from your mind.
It completely evaporates. And the immediate reflexive thought we all have in that moment is, I just don't know enough.
Oh, totally. We think my vocabulary is too small.
Right, like I need to go home, open up my app, and memorize another 500 flashcards. We treat it like it's a data storage problem.
Yeah.
But honestly, that is the biggest myth in language learning. When you freeze up like that, it is almost never because you don't know the words.
Right, and the proof is right there in your own listening comprehension.
Yeah.
I mean, you are standing there listening to the other person speak, and your brain is processing their English effortlessly.
Yeah, you understand the nuance perfectly.
Exactly. You know exactly what the topic is. The cognitive database is clearly full. Because, you couldn't understand them if the vocabulary wasn't already stored in your long-term memory.
So if the data is there, why does the screen just go blank the second the conversational ball is past you?
Well, because we're diagnosing the wrong system entirely. The issue isn't with data storage at all. It's with data retrieval under pressure.
Okay, that makes sense.
Like, think of your brain's language center not as a computer hard drive, but as a massive, sprawling library. And inside this library is a librarian whose sole job is to fetch the words you need.
Oh, I like this. A mental librarian. Or, I sometimes think of it like having a fully stocked kitchen. Yeah, like you have all the best ingredients right there in the fridge, but when someone asks you to cook a meal on the spot, you freeze because you can't decide on the recipe.
That is a perfect way to put it. You're paralyzed by the recipe, not missing the ingredients. And going back to the librarian thing, it's the same idea. When you're sitting in a quiet room writing an email or doing a workbook exercise.
Where there's no pressure.
Right, zero pressure.
Yep.
You calmly ask the librarian for a word. They stroll down the aisles, find the perfect vocabulary word, and bring it back to you. The system works beautifully.
Because you have time.
Exactly. But in a live conversation, the whole environment changes. You don't just ask for a word. You scream at the librarian that you need a flawless, highly sophisticated, grammatically perfect sentence right this second.
Or else you're going to look stupid in front of another human being.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And the librarian panics.
Complete panic, I imagine.
Total panic. They start sprinting down the aisles, dropping books everywhere, bumping into shelves. They are so overwhelmed by the intense, immediate demand for absolute perfection that they just return to the front desk empty-handed.
And you get dead silence.
Dead silence.
Man, that perfectly captures the internal chaos, It feels empty because nothing is coming out of your mouth, but inside, your brain is actually working in massive overdrive.
Oh, absolutely overdrive.
Which kind of brings us to the actual mechanism of the freeze. It really has to do with how much information we're trying to process simultaneously.
Right, cognitive load.
Yeah.
Because there is a strict biological limit to how much active thinking we can actually do at one time.
Exactly.
Our working memory, that's the part of the brain that holds information in real time. It can only juggle roughly 4 to 7 distinct pieces of information at once.
And if we look at what you're trying to do during an English conversation, you just blow past that limit instantly.
Oh, immediately.
You're trying to monitor your accent, you're trying to remember the past participle of an irregular verb.
Right, try to figure out if you should use in or on.
Exactly. Plus, you're reading the other person's body language and trying to formulate a compelling argument. You're asking your working memory to juggle 20 things when it can only hold 5.
And so the system simply crashes. It is identical to a computer freezing because you open 40 demanding applications at the exact same time.
Yeah, the cursor stops moving.
Right. And it's not because the computer is empty, but because the processor is entirely maxed out. Your mind is running this relentless internal checklist before it allows you to vocalize a single sound.
But let me push back on this a bit because I can hear people listening thinking this right now.
Okay, go for it.
If I'm just chatting with a friend at a coffee shop, sure, maybe I don't need to run that strict grammar checklist.
Right.
But what if I am in a high-stakes environment? You know, what if I'm on a Zoom call with my boss and the entire executive team is native English speakers? I can't just abandon my internal quality control.
That is the ultimate fear, isn't it?
Yeah, because if I don't run that checklist and prioritize my grammar, I'm going to look completely incompetent in front of the people who pay my salary.
The professional stakes just feel incredibly high in those moments. But here's the cruel irony of that exact situation. The harder you try to force perfection to impress your boss, the worse your actual performance will be.
Really? Because of the stress?
Yes, because of the biological reality of stress. When you perceive a social threat, like the threat of looking incompetent in front of your executive team, your body releases cortisol.
The primary stress hormone.
Exactly. It's our evolutionary fight or flight response.
Yeah.
And the huge problem here is that cortisol literally impairs the hippocampus.
Wow.
Yeah, and the hippocampus is the exact part of the brain responsible for memory retrieval.
So the fear of forgetting a word chemically guarantees that you will actually forget the word.
It is a vicious biological trap. You try to be perfect to avoid judgment. That demand for perfection creates a massive cognitive load. The potential for failure triggers a cortisol spike. And then the cortisol physically blocks your librarian from accessing the vocabulary aisles.
And the result is you just sitting there on that Zoom call, unmuted, staring blankly at your webcam while the silence just stretches out.
Exactly. It's brutal.
And let's talk about that silence for a second, actually, because the perception of time warps completely depending on what language you're speaking.
Oh, that's interesting. How so?
Well, think about it. If I am in a boardroom speaking my native language and someone asks me a really complex strategic question, I might pause for, 3 or 4 seconds.
Sure, totally normal.
Right. I might look up at the ceiling, steep my fingers, and just think. And in that context, I feel completely in control.
Yeah, you look thoughtful.
Exactly. I'm taking my time to deliver a measured, intelligent response. The silence is just a tool I'm wielding.
Right.
But if I'm in that exact same boardroom, speaking a second language, and that exact same 3-second pause happens, it feels like a career-ending disaster.
Oh, completely. It feels like an eternity.
It feels like a spotlight has suddenly clicked on, blinding me, and the entire room is thinking, wow, they really don't know what they're talking about. It feels like a catastrophic failure of fluency, rather than just a thoughtful pause.
Which, of course, only spikes the cortisol even higher. We judge our own silence so much more harshly when we're operating in a second language.
You really do.
We hold ourselves to this impossible standard of continuous, unbroken speech that, honestly, not even native speakers achieve.
That is such a massive point. We're constantly comparing our struggling, real-time spoken language to the polished, edited paragraphs of a written textbook.
Yes.
But if you actually sit down and transcribe a recording of 2 native speakers hashing out a project in a meeting, it reads like total chaos.
It is incredibly messy. Native speech is just full of half-finished sentences. People change grammatical direction right in the middle of a thought.
Yeah, they use the wrong tense and just keep going anyway.
Exactly. And there are pauses everywhere. But the big difference is that native speakers don't let the pauses turn into panic.
Yeah.
They manage the silence.
Right. They use rhythm management, which completely reframes some of the advice we normally hear.
How do you mean?
Well, a lot of language advice tells people to use survival phrases, right? Like basic filler words, maybe? I don't know, or let me think about that.
Oh, right.
But they are almost always presented as beginner hacks. Like it's a crutch for people who just don't have enough vocabulary.
And framing them as a crutch is such a huge disservice to the learner. These aren't signs of basic beginner English, not at all. They are highly advanced strategic tools for managing cognitive load. When you use a phrase like, that's an interesting point. Let me think about how to phrase this. You aren't showing weakness.
What are you showing then?
You are asserting control over the pacing of the conversation.
Oh, wow. You're buying your mental librarian time to find the book without screaming at them.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Because conversation is fundamentally a rhythm game. Think of it like a rally in tennis.
Okay, tennis.
When someone hits the ball to you with a question, you have to hit anything back to keep the rally going. If you freeze in dead silence for 10 seconds trying to engineer the perfect backhand swing, the ball just bounces past you. The game stops. It gets super awkward.
But if you immediately vocalize something simple, even just in, I think you put your racket on the ball, you kept it in play.
And by keeping it in play, you signal to your conversational partner, hey, I have the floor, I am engaged.
Right, you're still in the game.
And that simple act of vocalizing prevents the awkwardness, which prevents the social anxiety, which prevents that massive cortisol spike we talked about.
So your brain remains calm enough to actually retrieve the higher level vocabulary you need to finish the sentence.
Exactly. It completely shifts the goalposts of what fluency actually means in the real world.
That's so true. Fluency isn't the ability to construct flawless, complex sentences with zero hesitation.
Not at all.
Fluency is the ability to maintain the momentum of an interaction, even when the underlying grammar is kind of messy.
Momentum over perfection. That is the fundamental philosophical shift you have to make if you want to stop freezing.
I love that. Let's expand on the physics of that momentum for a second, because it really reminds me of the gyroscopic effect of riding a bicycle.
Okay, how so?
Well, if you sit on a bicycle at a complete standstill, you have zero stability. The moment you lift your feet off the ground, you just tip right over.
Right.
To balance, you don't need a tighter grip on the handlebars. You need forward motion.
The forward movement is literally what creates the stability.
Exactly. And people who freeze when speaking English are essentially trying to balance on a stationary bicycle.
Oh, that's such a good image.
They grip the handlebars, the grammar rules so tightly, their knuckles turn white. They stare straight down at the front tire, just micromanaging every tiny wobble of their pronunciation.
And because they aren't moving forward, they crash.
Right. The freeze is the crash.
Wow. So to stay upright, I just have to relax your grip, look up at the horizon, and start pedaling.
Yes. And in a conversation, pedaling means speaking. Just throw out an imperfect sentence. Use a simple word when you can't find the sophisticated one. Keep the pedals moving.
Because the forward momentum of the conversation will provide the psychological stability you need to eventually find your balance.
Exactly. And the incredible thing is, once you start prioritizing momentum, the perfection naturally follows later.
Really? How does that work?
Well, because when your brain learns that it doesn't have to fear the silence, the anxiety drops. And when the anxiety drops, you suddenly have total access to all those flashcards and grammar rules you studied.
Right. You stop blocking your own access to the library.
Exactly.
It is such a counterintuitive truth. Giving up the demand for absolute control over your language is actually the only way to gain mastery over it.
It really is.
Because language is just too dynamic, too fluid, and too deeply tied to human emotion to be micromanaged like a math equation.
Okay, so we have covered a massive amount of psychological and biological ground here today. Let's pull this all together into a clear, actionable framework for you listening.
Let's do it, because understanding the mechanism is only half the battle, right? Applying it in the real world is where the transformation actually happens.
Definitely. So, step 1, recognize the false diagnosis. When the freeze happens, remind yourself instantly, this is not a vocabulary problem.
Right. Do not go buy another textbook or download another flashcard app. Trust the foundation you have already built. The words are in your head. You just need to manage the environment to let them out.
Second, recognize the biological limit of your working memory. Stop trying to run a 5-point internal grammar check while simultaneously trying to speak.
You really have to give yourself psychological permission to make grammatical errors in real time, knowing that connection and flow are vastly more important to the person you're talking to than perfect syntax.
Exactly. And third, deploy rhythm management strategically. Stop viewing phrases like, let me think, or maybe, or I'm not sure, but as signs of incompetence.
Right. Treat them as advanced cognitive buffering tools. Use them to hold the floor, manage the silence, and keep the cortisol levels low while your brain retrieves the necessary information.
And finally, change your metric for success from perfection to momentum. Stop trying to balance on a stationary bike.
Keep the conversational pedals moving forward, even if the ride is totally wobbly.
Which sets up a pretty perfect challenge for you to take into your real life this week.
Oh, absolutely.
The next time you find yourself in an English conversation, whether it's a casual chat at a coffee shop or a high-pressure Zoom call with your executive team, I want you to completely change the rules of the game.
Okay, what's the new rule?
What if your only goal for that single conversation was to answer every question within 2 seconds?
Wow. Even if it means using the simplest, most basic vocabulary imaginable.
Even if it means making a blatant, obvious grammatical mistake. What if you traded the 10 seconds of agonizing silence you usually spend building the perfect sentence for an immediate, imperfect 2-second response?
I love that.
Ask yourself, how much faster would your actual real-world fluency grow if you finally abandoned the illusion of perfection and just embraced the reality of momentum?
It forces you to actually play the game instead of just standing on the field reading the rule book.
It really does. Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it helps you relax your grip, Trust your own mind and keep pedaling forward.
We will see you next time.
Until then, keep the conversation moving.